7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. in California. Several breaking stories as we come on the air this evening. A massive, fast-moving wildfire that you've been watching for the past couple of hours in Los Angeles has now caused evacuations or forced evacuations for 31,000 people. Of course, the city's already been devastated by one of the most expensive natural disasters in U.S. history. The new Hughes fire has exploded in size. It's now the size of 8,000 acres. Donald Trump visits Los Angeles on Friday to survey the damage from last week's fire. We'll keep an eye on the fires in Los Angeles, out to our crews on the ground as news warrants. Donald Trump will also visit North Carolina, where hundreds of families are still living in RVs from Hurricane Helene. It's currently single digits in the mountains of North Carolina. And Donald Trump has promised that he will take as good a care as the people in North Carolina in the mountains as the people in California, hence why he's going to both places. Also tonight, reinforcements are headed to the southern border as we speak. The Pentagon is deploying 1,500 active duty troops and will use military transport aircraft to deport illegal aliens back to Mexico or their home country. This is live pictures of the crossing at McAllen, Texas. A Texas congressman tells us if sending armed troops to the border is actually the answer and what the dangers are for the new White House policies. Plus, President Trump won't step foot in the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland this week, but his return to office looms large over the gathering of the world's elite. We're going to tell you how the Trump doctrine is already shifting the plates, the tectonic plates of the global order, and what he will say in his speech tomorrow. With that, we welcome you to the Farish Network on television. And first tonight, President Trump goes scorched earth on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Today, he doubled down by threatening government workers who changed the names of these programs to keep them around. That's our Why It Matters segment tonight. With the stroke of a pen, the president began the destruction of the DEI movement inside the American government. It's one of the most rapid changes in public policy in the past 30 years. And these are just a few of the examples that have taken place in the last 55 hours. The head of the Coast Guard, Admiral Linda Lee Fagan, was removed from the job. Homeland Security officials cite her extensive and excessive focus on DEI policies. Federal workers involved in DEI programs, those who actually manage them in the agencies, are on paid leave, with the expectation they will soon be fired. Andrea Lucas is now overseeing the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. She's an outspoken opponent of the diversity, equity, and inclusion movement. Donald Trump has also ordered the Federal Aviation Administration to end its DEI hiring efforts and to return at the FAA at all to merit-based hiring. List goes on and on. For almost a year now, we've reported on how DEI is teaching Americans that the country is inherently racist. And DEI says the only way to combat that and to combat the past ills is new racism, more racism. Supporters of the movement are more akin to neo-Marxists rather than classic liberals. Politics is downstream of culture. And even Don Lemon is one of several people on the left who realize now they are on the wrong side of this issue.
There are some great things about DEI, but it's not all, roses. And I think we need to take a look at it, and we need to sort of do some rejiggering, because it's gone too far. It's become a religion. And if you don't abide by the religion, then you get kicked out of the church.
You want to be a good ally? Address the actual problems. Any racial problem in this country is not addressed by DEI and having programs like that.
Out of this culture of diversity has grown the collection of ideas and practices that we have now all heard of. Safe spaces, trigger warnings, microaggressions.
Do they actually believe that? Who knows? Because a couple of years ago, they were all in on DEI. But they have certainly read the country. Well, we will be the first to say that today's diversity, equity, and inclusion movement is not the same as what the founders of the civil rights movement envisioned. In fact, Martin Luther King's message on the matter was pretty clear.
I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Something changed in 2020 after George Floyd's murder. The pendulum that was already swinging got accelerated. All of a sudden, there was power and money in DEI and creating these programs. Walmart started teaching employees about critical race theory, part of a new program with the Racial Equity Institute. Documents uncovered by Christopher Rufo show the program claimed that whites are guilty of internalized racial superiority. And also, quote, that one's comfort, wealth, privilege, and success has been earned by merits and hard work is racist. You must believe that anything that good comes to you is through the benefits of systemic racism. Verizon launched a similar program called Race and Social Justice, which is basically a re-education program focused on white privilege and intersectionality. Welcome to North Korea. Diversity trainers there started by asking employees to determine their position on the privilege hierarchy based on their race, ethnicity, gender identity, religion, education, profession, and sexual orientation. Defense contractor Lockheed Martin had its own DEI renaissance. The company sent executives to a 3-day white male re-education camp to deconstruct their white male culture. Part of the camp covered the so-called connotations for the term white men, including old, racist, privileged, angry, KKK, guns, guilty, and can't jump. The list goes on and on and on. DEI divided America based on race and then punished people because of their race. It demanded equity of outcomes, not equality of opportunity. They tried that once in the Soviet Union. Didn't work then. And now it's getting blown up in America. We begin tonight with Robbie Starbuck, an anti-DEI activist, and C.K. Hoffler, CEO of the C.K. Hoffler Law Firm and chair of the board at the Rainbow Push Coalition. Nice to see both of you. Thank you. Robbie, since this has been your wheelhouse and you've been pushing for this for a long time, start with you. Is DEI dead?
It's not quite dead. No, I would describe it as a wounded animal, and right now it's trying to do anything it can to survive. It's going to take time, I would say 18 to 24 months to officially call it dead, because as you can see from the orders from President Trump, they've got this line in there that if you are caught trying to conceal DEI, there will be adverse consequences, and that's because they know that there are people trying to conceal it. In fact, I broke the news last night. I had an NSA whistleblower come forward and give me documents that I posted publicly online on X that showed that they were doing just, in fact, that right there, trying to conceal DEI under a new name. And we're going to root all this stuff out, but we know that they're going to continue to try to burrow it into the institutions. All
right. C.K. Hoffler, to you. I know that you don't think this is a good idea or like it, but do you think Robbie has accurately described the state of play?
I think he pretty much has accurately described it, and I absolutely vehemently disagree with the nation of DEI. I mean, there's no question about that. And I think that this president is going to do everything to eliminate and abolish it. But you cannot eliminate and abolish by eliminating those policies. You're not going to eliminate discrimination. You might enhance discrimination, but you won't eliminate discrimination. It's the exact opposite is going to be the result of the abolishment of the policies. There's got to be, we don't need to engage in extreme behavior. And I think in implementing these policies at the beginning, within 24 hours of being sworn in, that I think ultimately it's going to backfire on this administration.
I want to stay with you on this. And I think, one of the reasons, right, and we said this in our open, is that I don't think anybody that I know of wants discrimination. People want the best and the brightest to rise to the top, regardless of race or religion or sex or sexual orientation or anything like that. Nobody I've talked to who's anti-DEI is pro-discrimination, but you think about what happened. It's so many of these companies, Walmart, McDonald's, Amazon, Meta, Tractor Supply, Ford, Harley, Toyota, Boeing, Microsoft, Home Depot, Southwest, Deere, Black & Decker, Jack Daniels, Caterpillar, Polaris, Molson Coors, and Lowe's. These are all companies that are now abandoning DEI, many because of how Robbie exposed what they were doing and put pressure on them. And I guess the question to you, CK, is can you ever revive something that was so, perhaps with good intentions, hurtful to so many people?
Well, and it's a matter of perspective. You may feel that it was hurtful to so many people, but there are so many people that felt it was helpful. And by the way, I've sued a lot of those companies for discrimination. So the fact that there is a sea change in policy is not going to eliminate the problem. It's going to exacerbate the problem. And so I do think that, yes, certainly there are people that abuse every system on both sides. If you, and there's no question about that. Just like there are great lawyers and there are bad lawyers and they're phenomenal lawyers. But one thing that we know is true, we're not living in a society, in a world that is void of discrimination. So
okay,
there is a need.
Let me give that to Robbie. Give that to Robbie, because I think it is a fair point, right? That President Trump is going to have to deal with. There will be cases coming forward in the federal government and in the private sector where there is real discrimination.
Well, of course not.
Yeah, I think that's why we had the civil rights era, and we should be enforcing our laws, because any discrimination on the basis of race or sex is wrong. We went through an entire era. We have celebrated the leaders of that era for getting those laws on the books. And then a bunch of privileged kids from elitist schools came through and decided they didn't do a good enough job with those laws. And actually, we need these onerous policies to guilt people at work, and to then actually create a new form of racism and say, we're going to set these hiring quotas all over corporate America. And as long as it's something that's hurtful to white people, it's okay. And I have a problem with that. I'm Latino, and I don't want a special step up or leg up from the U.S. government or from anybody else in order to get a job. I want to achieve it on merit, not because I was able to check a box for a company. And frankly, I think the whole thing is bigotry of low expectations. The whole idea behind DEI, the premise of it is that on equal footing, you can't get a job versus a white person well enough, so you need to have an extra special leg up. And I think that's disgusting. I think everybody's capable of competing, and I want to compete and achieve things on merit.
So, CK, if we're gonna try to get to a common understanding here, though, and I think that there has to be something that comes out of this. How do we get to a point where, going forward, if you believe so much in DEI, which I think you do, and they're sincerely held beliefs, that's fine. How do you all rebrand something that has been so defined now, and that so many people are so angry about in so many ways?
Well, so many people are angry about, but there are so many people that are not angry about it. It's you either.
Hold on. Don Lemon of all people says it's a religion, and if you don't subscribe to it, you get kicked out of the church. That is a branding problem, if nothing else, is it not?
Well, that's one perspective. That's one perspective. You can't sit here and say everybody thinks it is. Obviously, everybody doesn't think it's a bad thing. Do I think it's a bad thing to completely, systemically eliminate it from every branch of federal government and corporate America as well? I do. I don't think that's a solution. I think it's going to backfire, because fundamentally.
How's it going to back? I'm going to give you the last word. How's it going to? Hold on. I'm going to give you the last word. How does it backfire?
Let me finish. And you have to remember, affirmative action DEI was created when you have qualified candidates. That's the premise. Qualified candidates.
And it was totally blown up into something totally different. No, you're not entitled to your own facts. You're entitled to your own opinion. I'm going to give you the last word if you want it on this topic. How does it backfire?
It's going to backfire because basically there are just as many people who think that this step to eliminate DEI is a bad thing as there are people thinking that it's a good thing. There's got to be a compromise. Draconian and drastic steps like this do not usually result in what is intended to result in. So I think that because if there were a movement in this country to completely abolish it and eliminate it, then we might not have the divisive country that we have. People need to come together. There is a solution, but eliminating DEI, preventing people from, and firing people who say the words, firing people from those positions is not the solution. And by the way, let's talk about athletics. Wait, let's talk about
hold on. You've got the, hold on.
We're not talking about that in athletics.
I've given you the last word. I've given you the last minute and a half. Americans, this poll I'm going to tell you is actually helpful to your argument. Harris Axios Vibe survey, 41% of those surveyed said they support efforts to roll back diversity initiatives. The majority, 59%, Robbie, either oppose those efforts or are unsure about them. Okay, Robbie, you all are getting what you fought for. There's no question about that. How do you prove to Americans they're better off with it?
Well, first of all, those same polls said that Kamala Harris or Hillary Clinton were going to be president, and we saw how well that worked out for them. So I think the polling's wrong because in real life, people are celebrating this. Secondarily, what she said is just patently untrue. DEI is not about putting people with the same qualifications in this place and say, okay, let's have the best one in the interview win. That's not how it works. The reality is I'm Latino, and I'm going to tell everybody the truth. If my kid goes into a college and they check a box that says they're Latino and they have a lower test score than a white applicant or an Asian applicant, they have a better chance of getting into that school even after the Supreme Court ruling, and the data bears that out to be true. You can have your own opinions, but not your own facts, and the data bears out that what I'm saying is true, and the same thing in job interviews. My kid would be given preferential treatment by checking a box that says Latino over a white applicant. That is wrong, and it is racist, and it should not be allowed in the United States of America.
The definition of this is what's so important. I'm going to thank you both, Robbie Starbuck, CK, thank you both for being here. The debate will continue in Washington and across the country as well. The president has now ordered U.S. troops to the southern border as deportations start to ramp up. But is the U.S. military really trained to deal with a migrant invasion?
This is something President Trump campaigned on. The American people have been waiting for such a time as this, for our Department of Defense to actually take Homeland Security seriously.
Pictures McAllen, Texas, day 3 of the new Trump presidency. These are pictures of a new border fencing program going up. Today, the president ordered 1,500 active duty troops to deploy to the border. They're going to also provide military airlift of more than 5,000 illegal aliens and assist in border wall constructions. First step of what could be a years-long deployment to stem from what the president and millions of Americans feel is an invasion of the southern border. Today's escalation was one he promised and one that a rising number of Americans, well, agree with.
Feelings towards immigration in this country, feelings towards undocumented immigrants and deporting all of them have become considerably more hawkish. And I think that gives Donald Trump much more leverage to go with the American people and sort of have these hawkish, some might say harsh, different rhetoric and also issue-based sort of going after immigrants who are here illegally. And so I think the American people are going to give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt to do what he wants to do.
With us now, Congressman Dan Crenshaw of Texas leads the Congressional Task Force to combat Mexican drug cartels. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. The 1,500 troops to the border, this is not what you and I have talked about before, which is using the U.S. military to go after the cartels, right? That's the next step?
Right. Yeah, definitely very different. I mean, what the military is instructed to do right now is it's logistical support. You know, they don't have the authorization to conduct law enforcement. They can't arrest anyone.
Should
they can take a lot of pressure off Border Patrol, and Border Patrol needs this badly. Their morale has been low for years under Biden. So now the military comes in. They're the ones building walls. They're the ones driving buses, conducting medical care, building the camps that are needed. It is a much, much needed help.
Should this go the next step, as President Trump sort of kind of alluded to when he was signing executive orders, and use the military for, what, cross-border, call them raids, operations against the cartels?
Yeah, I mean, it's a much more complicated discussion. I mean, the cartels are present as an insurgency throughout Mexico. We need a cooperation agreement with Mexico to get it done. This has always been a problem because Mexico doesn't want to play ball. They don't want to admit that they have a problem. But President Trump is a president who can use a carrot and a stick approach and actually get them to do that. We do a little bit with the Mexican government right now, but yes, we need to do a lot more. They need our support. They need our expertise. They need our close air support, our weaponry, our special forces to help them, their special forces, take down a lot of the leadership and attack it in what we would call network operations. You know, not just the guys at the top, but also all the facilitators in the middle. You need to do it all, and that's a long-term approach, and that requires something that looks a little more similar to what we do with Colombia. We call it Plan Colombia. It looks more similar to what we did with the Iraqis to fight off ISIS.
Well, right, to be fair, right, the Mexicans have to want that. I guess they don't have to, but it helps.
Yeah, they have to want it.
If they do. Mass deportation support over the years. It's only 17% 2015. That's when Donald Trump started talking about building a wall. Now it is up to 54%. And you saw what CNN commented on that. And you also have to believe that number is probably a little bit higher. just because polling typically doesn't pick up a lot of the support for Donald Trump and some of his policies. You're from Texas. There's a lot of families down there where you have a mom or a dad who's a U.S. citizen. The other one is an illegal immigrant. They've got a couple of kids who are U.S. citizens. How much do you worry that as these enforcement actions, raids, call them whatever you want, continue, that the media is not going to focus on the hardened criminals who are being sent home and the rapists and the drug dealers, but on one or two families where there's someone who otherwise has not committed any crimes, but is here illegally, gets deported, and that's going to suddenly become the cause celeb, and those support numbers go like that?
We'll see what happens. That very well could happen, but as you stated right now, the overwhelming support is to go after people who are here illegally, and those numbers go up wildly. Up to, I think, 87% of Americans want anyone who's committed a crime, even just arrested for a crime, to be deported. That was the Lake and Riley Act passed today, will be signed into law, and Democrats even came across the aisle to sign that. So. And that's not because they've changed wildly on immigration. It's because they see those polling numbers and they see how much Americans want people deported who have broken the law. I think everyone realizes that causes a magnet here. If there's no consequences for action, it'll just keep happening. And you have to draw that line in the sand at some point. Yep. And that's what President Trump is doing.
Yeah, certainly he has. Or a line across the Rio Grande, as it were. Congressman Crenshaw, appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Close the border. Done. Deport illegal immigrants. Done. Donald Trump is winning for his party on the border. I'll tell you the new problem for Trump with immigrants that he might not be able to fix. And Trump continues his very busy first week. He's heading to North Carolina and Los Angeles later this week, where the fires continue to spread. We'll check in on those in a minute. He's carrying out his agenda when it comes to immigration. Everyone agrees about stopping people from coming across the border illegally. Republicans certainly are in lockstep. Even Democrats are getting in line. They just passed the Lake and Riley Act to deport illegal immigrants who are arrested for low-level crimes. But the White House and MAGA supporters are divided over the issue of H-1B visas. These are a special classification of foreign worker visas for non-immigrants, and they apply to work for specialty occupations where distinguished merit and ability has been proven. In other words, workers who have some kind of unique skills that are hard to find. And this is a big deal. There are 386,000 people who came to America on H-1B visas in 2023. Elon Musk loves them and uses them to hire foreign skilled workers, oftentimes at much lower prices. But people like MAGA TV show host and longtime Trump confidant Steve Bannon are against them, saying they undercut Americans.
Let me just restate something. As a fact, the H-1B visa program is a total and complete scam from its top to the bottom.
With us now, Peter Navarro, Senior Counselor for Trade Manufacturing at the White House. Good to see you. Welcome back.
Good to see you.
All right, good to see you, sir. We'll get to your new office, which was your old office, in a minute. Make sure the key still works. Is this divide in the White House over H-1Bs real?
You managed to pick the one issue I have had no visibility on, not my lane. All I can tell you is from the past, this was a very important issue to the Buy American, Hire American issue. And the concern, of course, is that you replace Americans with cheaper talent, as it were, from other places. And there was a lot of abuse of that visa in the past, but I can't bring you up to date on that one.
Okay, well, I'll put it this way. It's rare you get someone who actually says, I can't bring you up to date on something, so we appreciate that. I'll give you something you can bring us up to date on. I think there's been a real change. And I want to get to the change inside the White House where you're working. Sure. But there's been a real change in how Americans are dealing with Donald Trump, specifically how corporate America is dealing with Donald Trump, an issue that you took a lot of heat on. You and I had some pretty good arguments over, was and is tariffs. Southern President Trump says he wants to bring back. And now the business community is coming around. Jamie Dimon, CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, on tariffs on CNBC earlier. Take a listen.
Yeah, look, I look at tariffs. They are an economic tool. That's it. They're an economic weapon, depending how you use it and why you use it and stuff like that. And, people argue, is it inflationary and non-inflationary? I would put in perspective, If it's a little inflationary, but it's good for national security, so be it. I mean, get over it.
Yeah, come to Papa.
Music to your ears?
Yeah,
Okay.
Drucken, everybody's talking. And I guess the canary in the coal mine would be, have you come around to my side? Because we
I don't come around to either side. You know that. Come on. We know each other well enough.
So, look, here's the thing. It's a sea change now. When I got in there at beginning 2017, January, Donald Trump was the tariff word was a 4-letter word, and I was the crazy guy, right? 8 years later, we've had stiff tariffs on China, steel and aluminum, and other things, zero inflation. I won't even go into Jamie Dimon's a little bit. There's been zero inflation.
You're saying there's been zero inflation caused by the tariffs.
And
okay.
I could give you 10 reasons why. And
I took economics in college as a reason I didn't continue.
The predicate for the whole thing, and every time people talk about, particularly journalists, when they talk about tariffs, they should ask themselves, why tariffs? And it's because we have the lowest tariffs in the world. We have the lowest trade barriers. And everybody else, as President Trump says often, cheats us. And so the function of tariffs over here in this bucket is to defend and protect American workers from unfair competition. Now, there's also national security issues. For example, the tariffs they've been talking about for China, Mexico, and Canada are tariffs designed to help us put pressure on them. That's a strategic tariff, not a defensive tariff. Those are strategic tariffs to stop fentanyl, which is killing 50,000 people a year.
You are seeing, and I'll put words in your mouth, you can tell me whether I'm right. You are seeing an enormous difference in the acceptance or the willingness of the business community.
Huge.
What do you attribute that to?
The fact that people saw the facts and the fact that President Trump put in that agenda and had very positive results. I mean, it is what it is. It's like, if you just think about it, what is the sense of allowing Japan to have these huge non-trade barriers, which makes it that they never buy our cars and we buy all of theirs? What's the sense of fighting with Europe and they have a VAT tax which screws us? So it's just logical. And Americans don't want to be taken advantage of. That trade deficit, hey, the External Revenue Service, by the way, let's not bury the lead. It's a brilliant idea. President Trump's favorite chart shows the percentage of revenues, government revenues, from tariffs over the course of this nation's history. Prior to 1913, it was virtually all of the revenues came from tariffs. Income tax comes in and then it flatlines, right? So tariffs have been an important part of our history, and we're going to see more of them.
All right. And look, to be fair, the willingness for that now in the business community among Republicans is a lot more than it was in the first time. I got to get you on this, though. And we'll put up live pictures of the White House because you are one of the originals. You did the 2015 campaign with Trump. You were in the White House for the first term.
Okay.
You perhaps resided in, shall we say, a different type of federal housing in the interim.
Yes.
And then you walk back into the White House. Okay.
Yeah.
How's it different this time around?
It's we're at the top of the learning curve instead of at the dead bottom. And so that has allowed President Trump to have a team which I think led him to sign the most record number of executive orders in history. And we're off and running. First 100 days of this administration will be the most successful for the American people that you will ever see. So far, taking 4 years off, I mean, that's...
You've had some time to think about some things.
There. So, and the people are great this time around.
Thank you. All right,
brother.
Welcome back to Washington.
Yes.
President Trump has been in office for 55 hours and change. We've promised, unlike all the other networks, to be fair to Trump. And to be fair, he's had about the best 55 hours of any president. The best first 55 hours. There's an impressive list of promises made, promises kept. DEI, immigration, trade, nominations, even the January 6th pardons. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. Then today, Trump confidant and Speaker of the House Mike Johnson announced a new January 6th committee. They will investigate the investigators and even let Democrats join on the fun.
Do you know how many Democrats are going to be serving on that, or are they going to be allowed to?
I'm going to talk with my colleagues and figure that out. We haven't decided yet.
Okay, but do you intend...
It will be bipartisan, yeah.
It will be?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Guess what? Donald Trump won because America had moved on from January 6th. Talking about it during the campaign did not work for Democrats. Playing the victim of the January 6th hearings will not work for Republicans. The American people care about their problems, not Republicans' grievances over how Democrats treated them. Panama is now begging the United Nations to help them and protect them from Trump threats to take back the Panama Canal. The Chinese are screaming about it, so are the Russians. So is that proof Donald Trump is doing something right?
China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
To do on the world stage. The international cabal right now is meeting in Switzerland. They call it the World Economic Forum at Davos, and they'll be listening to two issues that Donald Trump has been talking about. He's going to address them via video. We'll see if he addresses Greenland and the Panama Canal. Talk from Trump about Greenland and the canal has made China and Russia big mad. Today, the Russian Foreign Ministry sent a clear warning to President Trump, and the Chinese are livid that Trump called them out over taking de facto control of the canal.
The purpose of our deal and the spirit of our treaty has been totally violated. American ships are being severely overcharged and not treated fairly in any way, shape, or form, and that includes the United States Navy. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back.
Ambassador John Bolton is with us, former assistant to the president for national security affairs, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Good to see you, sir. Thank you. At some point, if Russia and China are angry, might that be proof that Donald Trump's doing something right?
Not necessarily. I think as so often the case with Trump, he's got a core of a significance of a directionally correct approach that he just loses in the fog of his own rhetoric. I mean, let's take the Panama Canal as an example. The first thing he said was that Chinese soldiers were operating the canal. That was flatly wrong and made him look foolish, made him look like he was totally uninformed. Now he's saying that the Chinese are simply operating the canal. That is also not true. The Chinese company that's involved is Hutchison Whampoa, founded about almost 200 years ago by the British in Hong Kong. Now, it's controlled by the Chinese government today, as everything in China is, but it has port operations. It has a container port at one or perhaps both ends of the canal. A container port unloads boxes from one ship and puts them on another. It doesn't have anything to do with the operation of the canal. I believe it is correct for America to be concerned about Chinese operations in major ports, canals, facilities like that all around the world. And if our objective is to get Hutchison Whampoa out of the operations of the canal, and by the way, many of the other facilities are run by American companies, and the way you do that effectively is you have a quiet word with the president of Panama, who in this case, by the way, is very pro-American. Pro-American to the point that before Trump raised the canal a couple weeks ago, he had said America's natural border is the Darien Gap, which connects the Isthmus of Panama to Colombia. We should work together to stem the flow of illegal immigrants coming from South America, across Panama, up through Central America to Mexico. So here's somebody who's basically asking for more cooperation with the United States, and Trump publicly slaps him. Is that a way to win friends and influence people and advance the interest of the United States against the potential Chinese interference? Absolutely not.
I have been rereading Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People recently, and I've yet to get to that chapter. It might surprise you. I will let you know if I do. But if we take Trump seriously but not literally, I think what you're saying is to somehow have a deal with Greenland where you control or have access to the lithium in Greenland and the Arctic ports or Arctic access that Greenland has, and you kick China out of Panama and once again reassert American dominance over the Western Hemisphere, North and South America. That's probably a good thing, and you have issues with how Donald Trump is doing it.
Well, how about if you stumble and make achieving your own objectives more difficult? Now let's take Greenland as an example, and I was deeply involved in 2019. I would be entirely in favor of obtaining American sovereignty over Greenland, perhaps making it a commonwealth like Puerto Rico, but you have to ask yourself whether it's possible or not. In 2019, as we were studying the alternatives, and there are a lot of things that are possible, somehow the Trump interest in Greenland leaked out into the press. And the Prime Minister of Denmark, who had heard nothing about our interest because we weren't ready, we were still studying the question, said that it was absurd to think that the United States would buy Greenland from Denmark in 2019. And Trump was asked about that comment, and he said the Prime Minister of Denmark is nasty, and that she was blowing off the United States.
Yeah. Well,
now, you know who the Prime Minister of Denmark is today? The same person. Nice work.
Yeah, well, okay, fair enough. And then, shall we say, a lower-level Danish politician had a slightly more colorful thought for Donald Trump on this one. Take a listen.
Dear President Trump, listen very carefully. Greenland has been part of the Danish kingdom for 800 years. It's an integrated part of our country. It is not for sale. Let me put it in words you might understand. Mr. Trump, f*** off.
Donald Trump, and I'll give you the last 30 seconds, I think takes that almost as a challenge.
Well, it could be. A little history for President Trump. Denmark is a democracy. When you slap their politicians rhetorically, when you embarrass them, when you treat them like dirt, they don't like it. And you've pushed them into a corner. Does that make achieving American interest Greenland more likely or less likely?
Fair enough. I think we can leave it there. Ambassador Bolton, it's always good to see you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate your perspective. College campuses, they used to be a MAGA-free zone. Not anymore. Why students coast to coast are no longer living in fear of expressing their conservative values.
Well, you can do what you want to us, but we're not going to sit here and listen to you bad-mouth the United States of America. Gentlemen!
There is a new fashion trend popping up on college campuses across the country. It is the MAGA hat. For years, wearing the red hat on campus would lead to accusations of violating another student's safe space. Not anymore. According to a Tufts University survey, Trump received 46% of the youth vote in 2024. It's a huge spike from what he received in 2020, something he very much likes to tell you about.
Republicans have never won the young vote, the youth vote. They win a lot of votes, but they never won the youth vote. We won the youth vote. He knew the youth vote. He said, Dad, you got to go out, do Joe Rogan, do all these guys, and we did. We did, and Joe Rogan was great. They were all great, right, Darren? They were all good. He understood the market.
Campus reform reporter, a University of Florida student, Emily Sturge, joins us now. Emily, thanks for being with us. We appreciate this. You've been on college campus now for 4 years. You're a senior. Are there new conservatives, or people just now feel it's okay or cool to talk about?
Absolutely. There are new conservatives and conservatives who are more comfortable about talking about beliefs that they've had the entire time. The energy and the excitement that we're seeing from young conservatives on college campuses to welcome President Trump back to the White House, that's retaliation against the left's campaign of intimidation that conservatives have faced on college campuses for years, being silenced in the classroom, being ostracized by peers, receiving failing grades from professors. Young conservatives are sick of being told how to think, what to say, what they can and can't post online. They realize that we've reached a turning point in this country where it's okay to talk about your conservative beliefs.
All right. Well, I think it's fair to say that we've reached a turning point. I get what's happening with young men, right? Especially young white men. We're told by Democrats that you're the problem, you're racist, you're homophobic, you're bigoted, you need to apologize for your privilege, on and on and on and on. And then the DEI programs, when people got to companies, meant they couldn't get jobs. Okay. I get the move by young men, and I get Donald Trump's embrace of young men on the podcast, on and on. Young women, I'm having a harder time understanding. Is it more about traditional values? Where does the women part of this come?
Young women like myself are absolutely sick of being told by the left that we need to care about the abortion issue, that we need to support a female candidate like Kamala Harris just because the mere fact she's a female. We also care about things like immigration and the economy, and immigration in reality is a women's issue. It's about women's safety. Think of Laken Riley. And at the Leadership Institute's Campus Reform, we reported extensively of how issues like this, specifically with young women, is part of how Donald Trump gained ground with young voters this election.
How much of this is Donald Trump versus actual conservative values?
Well, I think something that's really interesting is how many students leading up to the election, when they were polled, wouldn't admit that they supported Donald Trump. We reported that nearly 50% of Generation Z wouldn't admit because they didn't want to face leftist backlash. And now we see so many students coming out and saying that, yes, they did support Donald Trump. They do support conservative values like the economy and values that Donald Trump supports all around.
All right. Emily, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Great perspective from the University of Florida. A little bit warmer than it is here. We appreciate it. We'll talk soon. All right. Tomorrow on the program, the United States Secret Service is getting a new leader. Is that enough to change the culture there? Coming up, huge interview with Chris Cuomo, Elon Musk's father, and an amazing insight into the man who is closest to Donald Trump coming your way. Chris picks it up from New York. I'll see you tomorrow night.